What's happening, guys? It's Dave here. I'm back with another review. I'm just now leaving my dad's, and it's customary for me to let him choose the movie we'll watch. And tonight he chose Rebel Moon, Part 1, A Child of Fire, which is the new Zach Snyder film that came out a week or two ago. And oh boy, not a great movie. Um, for something that was clearly inspired by so many things, like Warhammer 40K is all over this movie. Like the bad guy faction in it is just the Imperial Guard from Warhammer 40K, down to calling themselves like the Militarium, and there's Mechanicus characters in it, and it's just like a shameless stealing. Not even bothering to file the serial numbers off, and so for something that is so inspired by these things, it is a very uninspiring watch, and it just felt kind of hollow and empty. The first thing I'll say that bothered me about it is the script just had no juice in it. The script was, they just wrote all of the characters to be flatlines. And there's no, it's kind of like you expect emotional buildups and then, resolution and things like that. And there just isn't any. There's none to be found. The things that happen are pretty much what you expect to happen. The action sequences feel like they're just there as window dressing. And it really does nothing for the movie. I mean, the script is to blame for the characters, but also the direction of the characters. The casting was off in some ways. Like, truly, I felt nothing. For a space fantasy movie, which this is basically great value Star Wars with a heavy dose of Warhammer 40,000, just dump that Warhammer 40,000 right in there and stir the pot up. It feels like there's no charisma in the movie. And that's what really drives these sort of fantasy stories, is like getting an idea of feeling for the characters, feeling for their struggles, and getting some levity from certain characters who might be comic relief. This movie is a Star Wars movie with no comic relief, which is unfortunate. There's no like punchy one-liners. There's no character who's like, oh, he's kind of clever. Like there's a Han Solo ripoff character, but with none of the charisma. It's played by Charlie Hunnam. He's just like a vacuous character who he has a certain accent, and that's about it. Face and an accent. That's what you get out of most of these characters, which is sad because the universe that they make could have been pretty cool. It could have been something that is interesting or fun to engage with, even if it was a ripoff of 40K or Star Wars. Like, that's okay. Things don't always need to be original. They say good artists borrow and great artists steal. So they stole a lot in this movie, but it doesn't feel, it rings hollow. And it's to be expected from Zach Snyder now. He insists on being part of the writing team on these movies, and I don't feel he's any good at it. Like, his characters just do things, and they're like, even in the Justice League movies that he did, everyone's pretty much just stoic and like, oh, look how cool they are. And the same thing comes over to this movie. Like, these characters don't do anything engaging. They're just like try to look cool in the face, and they try to say these like grandiose, sort of poetic, um, sort of mic drop lines, and nothing really hits. It's kind of sad. I will be watching part two probably. Part one was getting the gang together type of movie, even though it's 5 multicultural characters who all act exactly the same. They're just stoic, cool dudes, like kind of Batman-esque in how they talk about stuff and the line delivery, which is I'm putting that on Zach Snyder. I just think he probably doesn't know how to get the emotions that he needs out of these characters. And there's some casting issues I feel too, like the lead actress in it. Like she really needed to exude some sort of charisma or any sort of energy, and she's pretty much a stoic flatline through the whole movie. So the script sucks. And then you got these action sequences, which are pretty much devoid of stakes or energy or anything to hang your hat on. There's no cool gore. Like it's a rated R movie, I believe. And I was like, man, where's the gore? Give me some exploding bodies or something, because they ripped off from Warhammer 40K all this aesthetic stuff, but they didn't carry over the gore or the fun, grimy grindhouse stuff that is so iconic to that setting. They almost made like a PG-13 milquetoast Warhammer 40K movie, and it comes off as sad. And aesthetically, there's a couple cool things throughout. The Mos Eisley Cantina scene, it's exactly Mos Eisley Cantina. They even find the Han Solo character there. I was like, man, I guess you could call it a reference or an homage. But anyway, it's Mos Eisley, but dingy, and all the aliens are just kind of gross orc-looking dudes. Like that's where the Uruk-hai characters from Lord of the Rings show up, which I was like, why are there Uruk-hai in this movie? It was took me right out of the movie. I'm like, you couldn't have come up with some other makeup for them. And then there's this like overly horny character who tries to hit on one of the leads, and he's like this gross orc looking dude. I'm like, man, this could have been so much more interesting. But there is like one character in that scene who I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. It's like this bug, a glowing bug with tentacles attached to this dead guy, I think, and he's like controlling the dead guy to talk for him. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I've seen it before, but it's something. It's and the bartender is a droid with a bunch of candles on its back. I was like, oh, that's something. Like it brought me out of the valley of mediocrity that I was in. It was like a blip of, oh, that's kind of cool, kind of neat. But then this just generic gunfight ensues when the orc guy who is like sexually advancing on one of the main characters and gets rejected. He like gets some of his cronies and comes back and starts a gunfight at this dingy Mos Eisley Cantina. And it's just like, you couldn't do anything better. You couldn't do anything different. After that, they acquire their pilot, which there's no stakes to that gunfight. Like, okay, everybody's going to survive because it's early in the movie. And they're not going to let this horny dude just gun down main character. So after that, they get their pilot, they proceed to go on a tour of different planets. The pilot's like, oh, I've heard this one warrior is on this planet. I've heard this other warrior is on this planet. And so they go on a tour of all these weird planets where they're just jet setting to different planets and showing you all these different little stories that are happening. But the characters they pick up are the same as the main character, And this is part 1 of 2, and you're supposed to get the juice of the characters in this one, so you'll feel like, oh, the stakes are established, and the next movie is really going to kick it into high gear. And you just don't get it. And there's some weird pacing things, like they pick up the first guy and he has this dumb scene with, he's just a hunk with chiseled abs who never puts on a shirt in the whole movie. And his whole thing is like, he's enslaved to this guy. He's like an indentured servant. The guy's like, listen, if you break in this huge bird beast for me, then I'll let you go. And he's like, all right, I can do it. So he breaks in the bird beast thing, which is like a knockoff Avatar flight sequence, and it's uninspired, boring. I didn't feel there were any stakes to it, even though there's lots of the trademark Zach Snyder slow downs, like melodramatic, overly dramatic stuff. And then he gets back, and they're like, all right, you're part of the team now. So I'm like, cool, this guy's gonna have a bird. I'm like, that's kind of cool. Maybe he'll fight somebody with the bird. No, the bird just gets left on the planet. The bird creature is part of this. It's literally a 10-minute sequence in this movie. And then it just gets left behind. I don't know, it was pretty disappointing to me. Like, you set up this guy as like, he can tame beasts. And that's it. Maybe that's his whole thing. I'm like, that's cool. There's a beast tamer in the group. No, he just, later on he gets a gun and he just shoots people. And it goes on like that 3 more times. Like, there's a little vignette where this Asian lady with 2 lightsabers, literally lightsabers, they're lightsabers. She fights a centaur spider woman. I'm like, oh, we got Dark Souls in the house. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. But the action sequence was like, all right, there's no stakes to it. You know that they went there to find this woman. The woman's like, all right, I'm going to do my cool thing and kill this spider lady. And then she kills the spider lady, and then they take off. The way the whole scene is set up, it's like, you know this lady is supposed to be a cool character, which she's just an Asian martial artist with 2 lightsabers. She's part of the team now. And she has no lines after that. She's just a stoic Asian lady in the background with lightsabers. So you'll get why I'm disappointed in these setups and payoffs. Like, they don't really pan out in an interesting way. And it's a lot of hollow, meaningless action sequences. And a lot of jet setting across the universe to legitimately interesting planets, pulled straight out of concept art type stuff. And then at the end they get spoilers, they get betrayed, and then they fight the big bad guys, the space Nazis, the Imperial Guard from 40K. There's the main bad guy is like basically a commissar from the Imperial Guard, except he fucks an octopus at one point, which was a pretty cool part. I'll be honest. I'm like, oh, I didn't expect a man to fuck an octopus. The final action sequence is just like a bunch of dudes standing in a spaceport shooting guns at each other, basically. And then the main character gets into a climactic fist fight with the octopus fucker. And that's it. And I mean, to really put a pin in how uninspired, the whole movie is essentially a setup exactly like Seven Samurai. Come on, guys. I know George Lucas riffed on Hidden Fortress for Star Wars, but that was way back then. Like, we need to do something a little bit more intriguing. Let me get some interesting morality. Let me get one fun character. Let me get one fun character who's not just set dressing, but actually like is a fun character throughout the movie. None of that. I'll probably be watching the second one just to see how it pans out. This movie for me was a big fat 2 out of 5, maybe even a 1. It's hard. I wouldn't give it a 1 because there's some craftsmanship. It's just painfully mediocre. I don't know. Zach Snyder just keeps getting these gigs, and he's like a well-known director. He's sought after and everything. What is he offering? I don't get it. So maybe it's just not for me, but leave me a comment if you really felt differently about this movie. It was really not it for me. So 2 out of 5. Really not a good movie. Wouldn't recommend. That's about it for this review. A little surprise, not in the pipeline. That's how it be sometimes with my dad, because I just go to visit my dad, and he watches a lot of movies. So sometimes he'll just drop a movie on me. And even my dad was like, yeah, I've already seen this movie. It's not good. I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, oh, but we can watch it because there isn't been shit on. So I'm like, all right. So I gave it a shot. I'll probably give part 2 a shot just to see. Maybe they'll throw in some interesting stuff in the second part that they withheld. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you like this video, press the thumbs up. And if you like my bald head, if you want to rub my bald head like a Buddha statue, subscribe. Thanks for watching, YouTube.